Bend Around the Wind by Skylia. Chapter 67. Fae. Fundamental Attribution Error. Oh, the ever-changing Midgard. It was not as boring as expected, but humans were still all too willing to see what was in front of their eyes instead of the truth. They were prettier than they used to be, though. And taller, but most of them still quite tiny. Smaller even than Stark, and less cute. Fine, not all of them. Some looked, dare he say, almost interesting, but not that much. He did like all the hair colors. Red and green and blue. He saw a few pink heads and some were purple. One looked like she was wearing all the colors of the rainbow on the top of her head. They had colorful tattoos on their skin and earrings in all kinds of places. The lipsticks were pretty, but he liked the colored nails best. Hatchet liked the strange clothes and the even stranger pets perching on shoulders or lazing in tiny bags. He liked the kids dashing away rolling on tiny wheels. He liked how the very high heels of some ladies tapped on the pavement. He liked the cars and the music coming out of stores. He did not like big cities, but he could take it in small doses. Not that Malibu was such a big city, because it really wasn't. Sadly, he suspected that he would have to go to Los Angeles if he did not find anyone here. He definitely wouldn't go there alone. On his first day out, he grabbed a soft wool hat that was the same violet color as his own eyes. It was to hide his ears, because he could be very prescient if he wanted to be. Then today he snatched a green scarf for Loki, because it was the same shade of green as his eyes, so he just had to. He couldn't resist taking a noisy little trinket for Bee. It played some tunes and had little dancing frogs on it. A bag of sweets he snatched for Juju because she was a sweet tooth. And when he saw a tiny gray wooden bird, he had it in his bag before he really thought about it. It had tiny black paintings on it, so it reminded him of Drongo's skin. Stark lived here all his life, so first Hatchet did not plan to gift him anything. Not that he actually planned to take back anything to the others. Well, fine for Loki. He had to get something for Loki. But then he laid eyes on a strange metal flower in a shop window, and well, metal just reminded him of Stark. So he took it. And, alright, the Fae. He wasn't just idly walking around in the sun, he was searching. But the Midgardian Fae seemed to be evasive. Sometimes Hatchet's nose caught the scent of burnt sugar and sweet, sweet grass, but it was hard to follow it, and he wasn't even sure if it was what he thought it was. He did not have much luck on the coast either, not just because of all the humans lying around in the sand. He ventured out during the night, too, but other than some men complimenting his arse, nothing noteworthy happened. One could argue whether that was noteworthy at all. His skin always started to itch when he was too far away from Stark's house and Loki, same when he stayed away for too long. He figured it was best if next time he tried by the coast at Stark's house. It was perfectly hidden from unwanted eyes. He was rather sure he could still recall the spell that could help him breathe underwater. If nothing came out of it, he could always convince Loki to go to Los Angeles with him. It was just 40 miles away, but he sure wasn't going to walk. He headed back, even if he still had nothing to tell Loki, and to his surprise, they had a guest. A red-headed lady, the widow. It had to be. A diddly and clever little thing, from what Loki told him, a liar and deceiver, assassin. She looked so tiny and breakable, and she had no magic, but Hatchet couldn't believe that she was deadly among the Midgardians. Her confident stance as she stood in front of Loki had to be an act. It was a good act, though. She was so still. Hatchet had the urge to shake her up. Things that were still were boring. He had his footsteps silenced, and he was invisible already, since he did not want any Midgardians to see him entering Stark's house. But instead of revealing his presence like he normally would have, he sneaked inside. He was confident that besides Loki and Jarvis, nobody would be able to notice him. Loki would because he would sense the presence of magic if he focused, and Jarvis because he had very interesting sensors. Hatchet already learned that if he moved too fast when he was invisible, Jarvis would see him. Notice the displacement of the air, maybe. It also took Hatchet some practice before he was able to hide his body heat to fool the cameras. Being invisible, both to living eyes and artificial ones, was a lot more strenuous. It was a fun game, though, and his magic needed an outlet anyway. It looked like Jarvis did not pick up on his presence, and Loki did not react either, so Hatchet felt his lips stretch out into a smile. He stopped before the widow could sense the presence of someone behind her, then dispersed his spells. "Hello there!" he greeted. He did expect her to react, although she was faster than he would have thought. She spun around immediately, and her hand was going for Hatchet's neck even before a second could pass. Fast indeed, but Hatchet was quicker, so he managed to lean back out of her reach and grab hold of her wrist before she could hit him in the throat. Peace, little spider, I just said hello. He smiled. He knew this smile was infuriating to most, and with good reason. It was his way to laugh without laughing. His magic was curling under his skin in amusement at the look in her eyes. The widow yanked her hand out of his grasp, and Hatchet let go without a fuss. She took one step back and stared at him. Hatchet just kept smiling back, curious of what she would do next. Stark interrupted the course. Is that my denim jacket? He asked, and my sunglasses? And where'd you get the beanie? Hatchet pulled off his violet hat and pushed the sunglasses up to the top of his head like he saw some Midgardians do out in the city. Why, yes. I did not want to draw attention to myself, and it's not like I have any Midgardian clothes. Stark's jacket was a little short by the sleeves, but just fine in the shoulders. The sunglasses were something he was already very fond of. He took a black one because he needed to hide his eyes from humans, but Stark had a lot of colorful ones too. Some were likely to disappear in the foreseeable future. Oh, okay. Stark agreed. Jarvis, make a note. We need clothes for everyone. But you could have just stayed invisible. He told Hatchet. Yes, but that would have been... He looked at the widow, who was still staring at him calculatingly. Then he looked around in the room, noticing the display that was up. 2 screens. The one on the right showed a man with dark skin and one eye. Oh, Fury. The other showed Bruce with a tall blonde man, the captain, and a shorter, darker blonde man, Barton. He looked a little worse for wear. They had an audience, so we switched to Elvish. It would have been counterproductive, since I want the Fae to notice me lurking about. Stark frowned, his eyes sliding over to the display. Don't you think? Loki silenced him with a raised hand. We're speaking in Elvish, darling, he said. Oh, right. Stark said he did not have all speak long enough to be able to use different languages again. He couldn't even hear the difference between one and another. So nothing yet? Loki asked, still in Elvish. I sensed traces of magic, but they're hiding. I will try by the ocean again tomorrow. If there is nothing, I will need your help for a wider search. Loki nodded. They would talk about this some more at a later time. Get to share with the glass? Fury asked through the display. Hatchet finally looked at him fully. I just said how much I like some of your Midgardian inventions. I don't think I ever saw nail polish before. Loki refrained from chuckling, but there was a twinkle in his eye that made Hatchet's magic pulse in delight. Who's this again? Fury asked after a long moment of silence. He's Loki's best friend, the widow said evenly. She said it like it was an insult, which of course shifted Hatchet's smile into something not quite fun and his magic into something thornier. If that ain't the best title I've ever had, he said and walked past her. Hello, Bruce, he greeted, looking at the other screen. And other humans. He dropped his bag by the sofa and sat down. Where are the girls? With Drongo, Loki told him. Ah, yes, B was not really needed in such discussions, while Juyu's temper was none too ideal either. They could probably benefit from Drongo being here, or maybe not, considering the scorching glare that Fury sent Hatchet's way. But maybe that was something special just for him. Drongo rarely got glared at. Where were we? Stark asked, directing the back of the conversation to where Hatchet interrupted. Hatchet noticed that Loki was wearing boots, so he went out. But where? He looked around the room again, and he spotted Loki's potion box. If someone would have been injured, they would have said something already. It was peculiar. Yes, let's get back to the part where your little house guest compromised one of my agents. Again, and the same one at that. Fury told Stark. It would be just great if you stopped talking about me like I wasn't here, Barton said. You're not, as far as I'm concerned at the moment, Fury said. Barton laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. You do realize I already told everyone who I was busting out. Yeah, about that, Stark said, his voice hardening with anger. Oh, interesting. This was not just the usual social call about Loki's world-dominating tendencies. How about you explain yourself, Fury? Explain your lies. I mean, we already knew you were hiding things from us, and that you were not above manipulating someone, but this? Bad call, Fury. Really bad call. Desperate measures had to be taken because of that man standing right next to you, Fury said. There are desperate measures, and there are things someone in the position of power should never do to his own people, Captain Rogers said in a steely voice. Steve wasn't. He really looked like a Steve. It fit him. He looked so Aesir, too, with his wide shoulders, golden hair, and sky blue eyes. You're doing okay, Clint? Bruce asked, interrupting. I'm fine, Barton replied. You should lie down. The pain will worsen, Loki said, and I did mention the fatigue. Yeah, and the glowing skin, Barton said as he held up his hand. There was a familiar dull golden glow beneath his skin. Oh, so that's why Loki had his potion box. Your ears are glowing too, Hatchet pointed out, helpfully. It looks quite charming. Charming like a Christmas tree, Barton said as he moved over to the couch that was behind Steve and Bruce. Hatchet had no idea what a Christmas tree was, but from Barton's voice, he assumed it was a joke, so he smirked. You want me to not be concerned about whatever Loki has done to him? Fury asked. Barton has taken the elixir I offered him out of his own free will, Loki said. You really have no place to hone in. What, you want me to believe that he was stupid enough to take something that came from you? I'm still right here, Barton yelled from the background. Whether it was stupid or not, it's none of your concern, Loki said. Hatchet knew almost everything that happened on Midgard. He asked for enough details to know everything important. Loki's way of talking to, or about some of them, was the most telling, though. He obviously disliked Fury, but he actually seemed to be just a little bit fond of Barton, like a whisker above indifference. But even Loki's indifference had many different shades. Like, his indifference towards Bruce was wary, but calculating towards the widow. Then there was the warm irritation whenever he spoke of Steve. The man probably just reminded him of Thor too much. He also knew that Loki liked the dear Lady Pepper, but he kept a polite distance from her. She was important to Stark, so Loki did not want to give her reasons for hostility. For Loki, that was going out of his way not to cause trouble. That was saying a lot. It always made Hatchet smile, because it was one of the many, many things that showed how deep his love for Stark was. His magic warmed in Hatchet's chest as he thought of that, but only because he knew that Loki's love was appreciated, like it should be. He missed some of the ongoing discussion while he observed and mused, but he focused again when he noticed Loki's tone getting angrier. If you still believe that I am the greatest threat you have to worry about, you are a bigger fool than I thought, Loki said. You might not be the biggest threat, but you are a threat all the same. You just prove that you are. He's just the guy you used to manipulate us. Stark interrupted. He sounded like he was getting angry along with Loki. Oh, it was never good when both of them were pissed. Well, Hatchet enjoyed it, so it was all good for him, but it might not be for others. There was an itty-bitty part of his brain called common sense, and it was kind of telling him to get Drongo. But it was such a tiny part, so he listened to the excited itch of his magic instead and stayed on the sofa. He's the one who stabbed him in the first place, the widow said, glaring at Loki. He was holding a gun at me. I'm allowed to stab people who are holding guns at me, Loki said. Fair point, Hatchet agreed. That gun didn't even hurt you, Barton yelled from the background again. I couldn't have known that, Loki said. It was reverse engineered from the destroyer. Hatchet whistled. You absolutely had the right to stab him, he said. Don't justify it, Stark said at the same time. Loki huffed softly and crossed his arms over his chest. Hatchet didn't know who they were talking about, but Stark's attitude gave some hints. He rarely expected Loki to be or pretend to be regretful. Well, he survived, Loki said finally, and when he wakes up, he will be better than ever. No need to waste more words on it. You still do not see who exactly you're defending, Fury asked, scowling at Stark. He tried to kill me too, you know, Stark argued. Things changed. Not someone like him, Fury replied right away. Hatchet did not like the look on his face. It wasn't just simple disgust. No, he talked like he was better, like Loki was some common criminal scum. Someone like him. Ah, there it was, the first coil of anger of Hatchet magic. It made his skin itch for a whole new reason. You should follow Barton's example and put aside your personal feelings on the matter, Loki said. The next time the Mad Titan sends someone, you will need me just as much as you need your heroes. If a threat arises, we will deal with it, and you will be rotting in a cell by then, Fury replied. Deal with it? Loki scoffed. You really think you could simply deal with a threat like him? It took the combined force of Boar and his allies to drive him away from here, and you really think you can handle him and his armies with a handful of humans indefinitely? No matter how exceptional some of them are, they will be crushed if you are not prepared. You threatened to crush us all, and we have dealt with you, Fury said evenly. Loki laughed sharply. It was all anger, and Hatchet's magic reacted in turn, boiling up to the surface in answer to Loki's ire. You honestly believe that I am anywhere near as dangerous as the Mad Titan? He has destroyed entire worlds, slaughtered billions with his hands. I damaged 3 blocks from one of your cities. My invasion was a single mothership full of empty-headed Chitauri warriors who had their general working against them. He has entire armadas, millions of soldiers, and if he finds a way here, Midgard will be gone. We have Asgard's alliance, Steve said. Oh, no, you don't, Loki said as he turned to look at him. You have Thor. He may be the next king of Asgard, but he's still just one man. You don't have allies. The rest of the 9 realms couldn't care less if all of you perished as long as their enemies remained on the other side of the gate. They will strike if their own worlds are in danger. They will protect Midgard, the gate, but not the humans on it. Most don't share Thor's love for your kind, and you don't have allies outside of the 9 realms either. If our chances are really that bad, having you changes nothing, Fury said. It's about making allies, Fury, Stark said. If we're wasting our time fighting among ourselves, we're going to be vulnerable. There are 1,000 little things we can do to prevent him from finding his way back here for a very long time. The Tesseract is secured, so we dodged that bullet, but he will send others to open other pathways for him and his armies. Like you said, Loki, Fury said. You still don't see it, Loki said. You still don't know how lucky you were that I was the one leading that invasion. Lucky, Fury scoffed. Hatchet felt a new wave of anger coming from his magic. You could despise your enemy. You could hate with a burning passion, but this man was dismissing Loki, disrespecting him. Like Loki's words were not worth hearing, like the help he was offering on a silver platter out of his love for Stark was not the most generous of Weregild. Hate he would accept, anger he would understand, even scorn, but such stubborn, insolent disrespect just for the sake of pretending to be superior, just to keep the upper hand in a useless conversation. He would not stand listening to that. It's so good that we don't actually have to convince you of anything, he spoke up. He also stood up and walked closer to Loki to stand by his side. So he liked symbolic gestures, whatever. Loki glanced at him, but did not tell him to stay quiet. That almost counted as encouragement. Splendid. You're standing there insulting my prince to pretend you're something you're not, he said. It was quite interesting that he did not need to play up the condescending tone. You're no king, no leader of Midgard. You're a child who sounded the alarm. Only the call to arms came from you, and for some reason you think that makes you a general. You really want to start this with me? Fury asked in return. I don't need to start anything, kid. The fact that all the great heroes are standing over here behind our noble Captain Rogers already proved my points. I just thought I'd share some wisdom and ask you, how much indulgence can you afford in your situation? What does it say about a man if the most righteous and valiant turn their backs on him? If that was your attempt at intimidating me, I must disappoint you, Fury replied, staring back at him evenly. I just laughed, and it was really about only half for show. He did feel a strange tinkle of amusement amongst the cold burning anger. He could feel his magic in the tips of his fingers wanting to be released, wanting to burst out, show how kind it was of him to use his words instead of letting his magic speak for him. I was really not, he said. I know when I'm throwing words at a brick wall. Loki and Stark are including you in this out of courtesy. You really must realize that. You know what I realize? Fury asked. That a dangerous criminal is free to do whatever the hell he wants just because Stark there was stupid enough to let himself be wrapped around his little finger. I realize that I have no reason not to march up to that house, knock down some doors, and lock him up until someone from Asgard deigns to come pick him up. I realize he seems to have some lunatic sidekick this time, and that just makes me all the more convinced that it's just a matter of time before he does something we could prevent by shoving him into one little box and wrapping him up with chains. Is that a threat? Hatchet asked. His pupils must have dilated because his vision narrowed down to the man on the screen and he could feel how badly his magic wanted to burst out. These are facts, Fury shot back. Well, let me give you another fact! Hatchet spat angrily. If you dare! Loki reached out and stopped him from moving forward, silenced him with a barely there touch on his hand. The moment he felt Loki's fingertips brush his skin, his magic settled somewhat at the familiar presence. It was still boiling just under the surface, making his skin feel too warm and paper thin. Okay, how about we get back to talking like reasonable people? Stark asked. And Fury, if you could stop poking at really old and powerful magical beings, that would be just lovely. I just proved how much they cannot be trusted, Fury said. No, you proved that you're really great at pushing people's buttons. Stark said, be proud of yourself. It was an absolutely non-productive waste of time. When Hatchet finally tore his eyes away from Fury as his magic settled down, he noticed that Stark was scowling angrily. He really did not regret picking up that metal flower. He was going to leave it in Stark's workshop. Yes, that seemed like a good way to go about this. Put it on his work table. I proved. Fury started again, still arguing, but Steve interrupted. Alright, I've heard enough for today, he said. We have already made a decision, Fury. Whatever Clint did, it changes nothing. We have an agreement with Thor. If Loki behaves and stays put, he can stay in Tony's house. But that also includes cooperation when Thor shows up, he said, and he was definitely addressing Loki now. He will take you back to Asgard. If you resist, we will use force. Are we clear? Loki let go of Hatchet's wrist, finally. Perfectly clear, Captain. I do expect you to leave decisions concerning me and my return to Asgard in Thor's hands, though. Steve stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. Fair enough. Such decisions have always been in Thor's hands. Oh, what banner there? Fury interrupted then. Excuse me? Bruce asked. I want to be sure that there is at least someone in the vicinity capable of stopping him. Fury said. That is my condition. You may be all stupid enough to leave him free, and maybe I can't do anything about it right now, but we will monitor the premises. If anything suspicious happens, we will move in. Consider that your warning, Stark. Because forcing your way into my private properties worked out really well for you so far, Stark said, still looking angry. Don't think for a second that you're untouchable, Fury told him. Banner. Fine. I'm going to pack then. Again, Bruce said, exasperated. I'm growing an even bigger dislike of flying, just so you know. Want me to pick you up, Dr. Banner? Loki offered. That was the second time he did it. Interesting. Of course, Bruce was Stark's friend, but still, twice now Loki extended a hand. If Bruce declined again, Hatchet was done being polite to him, green beast or no green beast. On the screen, Bruce turned and looked at Barton, who just shrugged lazily. The elixir was still working through his system. It was a wonder he managed to stay awake. Bruce sighed. Fine, he said in the end. Let me just pack first. I'll be ready in an hour. He immediately disappeared from the screen then. And exactly how long are we going to wait for Thor to show up? The widow asked. Sometimes he's gone for months. Why wait? Loki asked and turned and headed to the front door. Hatchet was close on his heels, and Stark followed too after saying a quick goodbye. Are you sure it's time? Hatchet asked. We could use more time to prepare. If I wait any longer, I will just find more reasons to delay this, Loki said. And you're tired of dealing with Fury, Stark added as they stepped out of the house. Oh, the widow followed them too, a little further behind, but still close enough to keep an eye on them. Hatchet wondered if she planned to stay at Stark's house too. He really wasn't overly fond of that idea. I am tired of dealing with all of them, Loki said, frustrated and annoyed. Stark reached out to touch the small of his back to draw Loki's attention to him. I know. Thank you, he said. One of the main reasons Hatchet liked Stark was the way Loki's face softened at those words. Only Stark could do that. Only he was capable of chasing away Loki's anger so efficiently. Only he could calm his furious heart so easily. It made Hatchet want to keep him around forever just to make sure that expression Loki was wearing would stay in place for as long as possible. Go on then, my prince, Hatchet said, putting his hand on Loki's shoulder, squeezing for a moment. He disliked the tension he could see there, even if he knew it was inevitable. Loki only moved a step away from them, and a moment later Hatchet could feel how the veil of magic Loki constantly had around himself to hide his presence from the all-seeing eyes dissolved. His magic felt much clearer now. All these weeks it was muffled, dampened, hidden, silenced. Now Hatchet could feel the vibrant energy around him again, and his own magic sang in answer to it, rejoicing at the presence of his friend, delighted in seeing him so alive and so very strong. His magic was such a capricious thing, curious and excitable, but it always reacted the same way to Loki's presence. It settled calmly and comfortably deep in Hatchet's very core after weeks of restlessness, because Loki was right there, hale and powerful, and that meant all was well. "Heimdall!" Loki called out, gazing up at the sky. "Tell Thor I would have words with him."